let's talk about the game that you just talked about, that you may have predicted. Every now and again, we say something on the preview show, and we can point back to it and say that's the thing that happened.
Every now and again, we're right.
Every now
Doesn't happen often, but every now and again, we get something correct.
When you speak for 8 to 10 hours a week,
right,
you stumble in.
Just by the rules of large numbers.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, you're going to say something, and it turns out right.
And we'll make sure that we highlight those things.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Goff implosion. There's some nuance to that. There's some stuff that went down. But the Washington Commanders get the win, man. Big upset here, 45-31. It was a big upset on paper, but also impressive by the Commanders. They're playing really well right now. And but this was the Lions' year, right? This was supposed to be their year. When we did the instant reaction the other day, we kind of split the review into two. We talked a little Commanders, talked a little Lions. Let's discuss the game as a whole and make sure we give proper credit to the Commanders, and then console our Lions friends, because that is a tough pill to swallow. Home loss in the divisional round as the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, I mean, from Washington's point of view, it's all good news for them. Jayden Daniels was, again, excellent. Their offense is cooking. They're able to put up points. They're able to keep drives alive. They stayed aggressive, like the Dan Quinn thing. Generally, he's been pretty aggressive, but I think he's kicking it up in the playoffs, understanding that if they go, however long they go for, they will be underdogs the entire journey, right? So in those scenarios, those are when you need to be aggressive, try and steal possessions, try and keep possessions alive by going for those fourth downs. And particularly, I think when you're going up against the Lions team that's going to do it as well. So you kind of need to keep pace with that. They were able to keep doing that and having that success in offense. And then their defense, it's like, did they force the turnovers? Did the turnovers just come to them? That's always a kind of question. But the defense made a couple of plays. And, this team is now, it's able to work in a shootout. It's able to make some plays against one of the league's best defenses or one of the league's best offenses. They're in the NFC Championship game against a team that they've already beaten. Like, they're dangerous.
Started out innocently enough. Detroit up 7-3. Innocently enough, right? 7-3 after the first quarter, which included a failed fourth down early on.
Right, they lost the first one.
Right, ugly Marcus Mariota comes in. He was going to sneak it. They were going to fake the tush push. Whatever was going to happen there, it got stopped. So it's 7-3, and then an explosive second half. Right, it was 31-21 at the half for Washington, and how you got there was wild and all over the place. And as you mentioned, like I mentioned on the preview show, that you might have Washington's ability to have these long sustained drives could shorten the game. They did have some long sustained drives, and I think that helped in the second half. But that was anything but in the second quarter. It was back and forth, and every time you see this all the time. Every time the almost 10-digit, double-digit favorite starts to make a comeback, it's like, all right, of course, they're going to make the comeback. Right. They're a better team. And the underdog, you just have to keep, counter-punching and coming back. And once they got that pick six, right, it's 17-14, and Jared Goff overthrow, throws to Quan Martin. Martin returns it for a 40-yard pick six. That was also when Jared Goff gets popped pretty hard by Frankie Louvu. That was when it was like, okay, Washington has a legit shot here. They're up 10, and hitting Detroit in the mouth here, hitting hard. They were flying around making plays. And once they were up 10 there, it didn't mean the game was over. It was just like, okay, they do have a legit chance to pull this off. And that was, middle of the second, toward the end of the second quarter.
Yeah. There was a period in the game where it was like haymakers from both sides, right? There was big plays left and right, like Jared Goff. They get the kind of, like Goff gets rocked, goes off the field for a couple of minutes. Teddy Bridgewater comes in. They run that reverse, and Jameson Williams houses it. They had been inches away. Like, they were kind of going back and forth for a period. I think generally for a big portion of the game, there was quite a lot of success on either side on offense, but Washington was getting the big plays. Like, they were getting the huge plays that were offsetting a lot of the kind of back and forth. They get the forced fumble on Jared Goff for the first turnover. Goff was just a hair off on a deep bomb to Jameson Williams as well. That would have been one of those haymakers that didn't quite come in. Then you get the pick six. They turn what could have been a touchdown before the half. Detroit was driving again. took a shot into the end zone. Mike Samerstill turns what would have been a touchdown into an interception. So Washington is getting all these sort of sequentially really important plays to preserve that lead and keep themselves, in a good position and stave off this Lions comeback that could have happened at any moment. Like Jameson Williams, if you hit on that bomb, that's a big step towards the comeback. If they get the touchdown instead of that Samerstill pick, that's a big step towards the comeback. Every sort of step of the way, Washington was just about able to head off this comeback and keep themselves preserved in the lead.
Yeah, it's true, man. Like the big plays that they were trading early in the game for the Lions, it was like, all right, this is what they do. Jahmyr Gibbs looked like the best player on the field. And that feels like it was a long time ago. Like by the time you got to the end of the game, you almost forgot it. He was rattling off 15 and 20-yard runs like crazy. He ends up with just 14 carries for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think the Lions, because of the game flow, got out of their flow, right, to be able to hand the ball off. And you could tell they wanted to give the ball to Gibbs a little bit more. David Montgomery was coming back from injury, but they were like, hey, no, we're not doing 50-50 split here. We want Gibbs and his big playability. That was working early. You mentioned the 61-yarder to Jameson Williams. You have Jared Goff going full Mahomes, falling over, making a touchdown pass. Now, it wasn't as accurate as Mahomes. Sam Laporta had to reel it in with a one-handed catch, but all the playmakers were making plays. Amon-Ra St. Brown ends up with 137 yards, right? Their playmakers were making plays, but I go back, like high level, I go back to week 2 when they lost to the Bucs, and it was all turnovers, right? Fumble luck, and they lost to the Bucs, and it's like if Goff implodes or if they turn the ball over, this offensive juggernaut all of a sudden not nearly as good. And then, to your point, Terry McLaurin, 58-yard screen pass, right? And just outrunning the defense, outflanks the defense. The bomb that Jayden Daniels throws to De'Ami Brown for 42 yards, where he's got his eyes covered, and it's just such a perfect pass by Jayden Daniels. Washington was able to go blow for blow with the explosiveness of Detroit while also forcing those turnovers and those game-changing plays defensively. And the Samerstill interception before the half, outstanding, right? It's a 10-point game. Detroit's in field goal range. So at worst, they could miss a field goal, but they're thinking at worst we're going to be down 7 at the half, right? As the favorites, they've handled the onslaught from Washington. But nope, Goff I thought Brady laid it out pretty well. Threw it kind of flat instead of leading him out. Samerstill undercuts it for the interception. Just outstanding play for Samerstill, who's had a great year as a rookie.
Yeah, it was a really nice play by him. He had a great game, made a couple of really important plays. We'll get to another one later on that Jameson Williams throw, the trick play that really dug them a hole. But the Goff replicating the Mahomes play thing, okay, it wasn't quite as accurate as Mahomes. It was, however, really impressive.
I'm joking, man. I wasn't taking anything away from Goff. That was a good play.
And that, early in the game, so one of the things that happened in this game, Washington's defensive line was getting pressure against one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Detroit's offensive line had been so incredible all season long. This is one of the reasons why they've been able to overcome the weight of injuries that they've had overall and in particular on defense. The offensive line's amazing. The offense generally has been amazing, in part because of that platform. Washington's defensive line was able to cause problems for them, and they were getting to Jared Goff early in the game. Not the first time that's happened this season, but in other games it's happened. Goff has been insane under pressure. Against the Vikings and Flores, they got pressure quite a lot, and Goff just went, doesn't matter. He's just going to deliver the ball anyway. He had the answers. And this was a play where, look, I think that was a design play to Dan Skipper again. Another, trick, red zone. Oh, look, an offensive lineman's involved. The pressure blew it up really quickly. Goff had to get somewhere else and found Laporta in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. But that was a really impressive play under pressure by Jared Goff. Then you get this thing that happens every now and again where a quarterback takes some kind of hit and suddenly they're not quite the same player again. On that interception, that was the sort of first bad mistake that Goff made, first bad throw that Goff made, gets returned, and then on the way back, Luvu just absolutely buries Jared Goff. Now, hit to the head, should it have been flagged, should the touchdown have stood, all those kinds of things. Look, don't really care. It's just a missed call. It's going to happen. I don't think it would have materially changed the game. What might have materially changed the game is the actual hit to Goff's head and him either taking the hit to the face or then collapsing backwards onto the turf. all of his really terrible decisions happened after that point. Now, may have just been coincidence, right? Goff may have just started to dig himself a hole, kept digging, and that's how you get the bad Jared Goff game. It's also reasonable to at least wonder if Jared Goff's brain getting bounced around in his head on that hit altered his decision-making for the rest of that game. I don't know, but you can certainly say, look, that was one bad miss, which wasn't a bad decision. It was just he overthrew him, right? The bad decisions all came after that. And I don't know if that had an impact.
I mean, maybe. I don't know how much that affects. The Sandra still, so he got strip sacked early.
Yep.
He had the overthrow for an interception, which obviously happened before. The Sandra still one's just a miss.
Yeah.
It's not a bad decision. He kind of, I don't know. It wasn't like he was throwing picks left and right that were just awful decisions. He threw a pick.
No, but he did notably,
game,
the composure disappeared after that.
No, I agree. So I think maybe that hit affected it, but also just Washington was hitting hard overall, right? And look, they gave up 31 points against a very good offense. But Washington's defense, I thought, set a really good physical tone. Secondary, the linebackers up front, you met Jonathan Allen, Dorrance Armstrong. They have stitched together pretty effective pass rush, particularly in this game, as you mentioned. I think all of that had probably more of a factor. But that was almost – I'm glad Goff came back in so we didn't get this whole, hey, your season ended by bringing in, no offense to Teddy Bridgewater. The guy was coaching high school just about a month ago, right? I mean, he finished up his high school season, came out of retirement, and came in as the backup. Led the long touchdown drive, though.
Yeah.
Points per drive with Teddy, pretty solid.
I still feel like Hendon Hooker has the right to feel quite aggrieved by that. You've been the backup all season long. Teddy's busy coaching high school. And
obviously, they don't have much faith.
Oh, we need a quarterback for a couple of snaps while Jared's getting looked at. Sorry, Hendon. It's gonna be Teddy right off the couch.
Two things. So just to touch on this quickly, there's a lot of stuff that I want to make sure we don't forget here. The potential missed call on Jared Goff getting popped on the return.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, if it had happened.
I think it's a penalty. I think it's missed. But all it would have done is set them up in the red zone as opposed to giving them the points.
Yeah, it takes a touchdown off the board, but
they wouldn't have scored it. But the way that game was going, you would say they probably score anyway.
The bigger missed call, though, was the phantom face mask on David Montgomery. Because that was on 3rd and 2. He would have been stopped in his own territory. Probably would have been 4th and 2. Just an egregious missed call.
Well,
and
so
he
this
gets
is
grabbed by the shoulder pad.
Yeah, but this is one where this is why replay exists. Like, this was a call where actually live at full speed, it looked like a face mask. His head made this sort of weird motion that usually only happens when a guy gets grabbed by the face mask. But actually, when you saw the replay and you slow-moed it down, you're like, oh, look, he actually doesn't touch him anywhere near the face mask. It's all shoulder pad. It's not a horse collar. It's like that's actually a totally legal tackle. Like, it's one of the few instances where replay is actually there and suddenly it dispels everything that you thought you saw live, which is then the purpose of replay is to go, oh, look, we got this wrong, let's fix it. But it's one of those situations where because of the dumb rules with replay, we're not actually allowed to fix that one. Sorry, I know we're all looking at that right now live after the fact, 5 seconds after it happened, in plenty of time to change the play. But the rules say we can't actually touch that one. So we're just going to stare at it, know it's wrong, and be annoyed by it.
Didn't they tell us the opposite on the Sam Darnold's night? When Sam Darnold has his face ripped off and they don't throw a flag, it's like, well, we can't just buzz in and just create a flag out of nowhere. But once a flag is thrown, we could buzz in, we could talk. Our friends from New York in the office who we know can say, hey, yeah, that's not a face mask. Yeah. It's not a face. I thought that was legal at this point. I thought people could buzz in.
There are certain things that they can fix. There are certain things that they're not allowed to fix, which is just, to me, if there are black and white, obvious, incorrect things that replay can see that you can fix before the next play has gone off, right? So, like, this idea of we got to hustle to the line so you can't challenge it, blah, blah, blah. If the dude in New York is sitting there watching this replay going, oh, look, that's wrong, and it's like way before the next play goes off, fix it. I don't care what the rule is. Fix it.
Honestly, there's enough things between the flop fest and some of the weird late hit calls and just the inconsistency there. That's my whole thing, right? And I think that's the fans' whole thing. Is you want to look at two different plays that look very similar and have similar results. And something like this, when it's clearly like face mask is binary, right? Yes or no. It's a binary call. You want to get
That's the thing.
There's some subjectivity to late hits and where the hit was and everything, and it's not as binary as face mask. Fix the face mask.
Nobody wants what happened a few years ago where we trialed, pass interference by committee, essentially. Like, do we debate this, review this? And it's like it's always a judgment call. This is not a judgment call. This is simple, black and white. The replay showed us this was incorrect in plenty of time to just fix it. Fix it. It's obvious. It's wrong. That's why replay exists. Those are the words that everybody tries to put into replay rules in any sport you can think of, like obvious incorrect calls. That's what that was. We all saw that 5 seconds after it happened. Just change it. We goofed. Like, that's one where you could just empower the guy on the field to look at the replay and go, oh, whoever called that was wrong. Like, I understand why he called it. That's not even one where you're like, oh, we got to punish the official for screwing that up. Like, on live viewing, I understand entirely why he thought that was a face mask, and I probably would have thought the same thing. But as soon as you saw the replay, it's like it wasn't. We fix it. We move on. It shouldn't be a problem. Instead, it's like, no, hands are tied. Can't touch that. Sorry.
So that's obviously Washington already won this thing handily, and that call, that missed call, probably stops the Lions' drive. Maybe they end up going for it, but probably stops their drive. Ends up becoming a touchdown drive. So from that perspective, maybe this was even worse. But and again, I'm very sensitive to fan bases here. So if I say, oh, let's talk about how the Lions beat themselves, that's not taking anything away from the Commanders. So let's just get that out there and make sure. But how did the Lions beat themselves? A couple things that came up here. 4th and goal from the 2, or 4th and 2, I should say, for Washington. 12 men on the field to get half the distance to the goal and a first down. It was a 3-point game at this point.
Yeah.
And so
this is huge.
12 men on the field for the Lions. And to Brady's credit, I saw the replay of this. I thought he was talking about the offense. I thought he was talking about because he was yelling, call timeout, call timeout.
No, it was, yeah.
I thought he was saying that because the offense was breaking the huddle late. No. I didn't realize he had it right. He said, there's 12 men on the field.
Yeah.
Like, dude, call a timeout.
Immediately.
It's early fourth quarter. You hate using second half timeouts, but this is an extremely high leverage play, obviously. And so they didn't call timeout. They get the 12 men.
It's like Brady's career highlight as an announcer so far. Like,
it is. And I thought he missed. I mean, I didn't think he missed it. I thought he was focused on the offense.
No.
The offense almost didn't get the playoff either.
No, from the outset, he's like, there's 12 guys on defense. Call timeout now. And they didn't. And he's just, well, okay, you screwed that up. They had basically, I mean, they hadn't held yet, but they had almost held on a crucial drive, tight red zone. Washington's going to do it again. They're going for it on 4th down. This is the game, really. Like, you're about to get the ball back if you hold here. Your MASH unit defense held together by baling wire and chewing gum is about to hold against this incredible Washington offense. You get the ball back. You can then drive, take the lead, and instead you screw it up by just having 12 guys on the field and not being able to fix it. And the thing about that is, like, the sideline saw it. You saw the sort of replays. They're cutting all these people on the sideline, trying to get somebody off the field. Whereas Brady had it right. You're like, you're not fixing that from the sideline with that little time. The only way to fix that is bail, call a timeout. Obviously, you don't want to, sacrifice timeouts, but like, this is why you call a timeout, because if you don't get it fixed and you have 12 guys on defense and you get the flag, you just turned 4th and 2 into 1st and goal from inside the 5, and now totally different ball game. I mean, you would bank on Washington getting it in, from a couple of yards away with 4 downs, as opposed to we got 1 down to hold. That was just critical. And this is where all the injuries on defense, like just the sheer weight of injuries, the volume over the season, really took hold for Detroit. Like, look,
they still had game. Explain what happened. Second snap, Amik Robertson.
I mean, look, they've had 16 people on defense on IR over the course of the season, or even just now actively. I forget which, but like such a volume of defensive injuries. And okay, a lot of the people they have left are starters. They still have Brian Branch out there, Jack Campbell, Onwuzurike, DJ Reader's back. Like, they have some players, but second snap of the game, Amik Robertson makes a tackle. Jack Campbell, actually, friendly fire comes in, blasts him in the side, and it looked very much like his arm just snapped in half. So it's like, again, right away, one of the stories of their season, right? They've had injuries everywhere. Amik Robertson, this guy that they've sort of claimed and at a reclamation cast off from other places, comes in, has been balling out in that secondary. Amik Robertson goes down with an injury. You're like, come on. Like, heck, can this defense catch any kind of break? And then, so now you look at some of the players that were playing significant snaps for them in this game, and it's like, look, this is not a group that, A, is supposed to be on the field, or B, if they are, you expect to be able to do it without making mistakes. So, they had a bunch of guys on the field that are not used to playing together, and this is how you end up with a situation like that where somebody's on the field that shouldn't have been on 4th and 2 critically at the goal line. That's a failing, though. Number one, somebody screwed up, the personnel-wise, but it's also a failing of, the solution was what Tom Brady was calling for 5-10 seconds.
Yeah.
And you didn't get that right either. You could have saved that from the sideline, and they didn't manage to get it done. That was a massive turning point in the game.
Safety Maurice Norris Jr. played 20 snaps. Mm-hmm. He had one career snap. Undrafted free agent out of Fresno State comes in. And that's the playoffs. That's what makes it really difficult to predict, is you don't know when these injuries are going to hit or who they're going to hit and who needs to come in. Clearly, that was part of the issue, though. 12 men on the field, so the Lions messed that up. Then they're down 10. They go trick play. And look, previous trick plays that worked in this game, Jameson Williams, I always forget if it's an end around or a reverse, but 66-yard run.
Well, so this is the thing. Yeah, this is important because those two plays were very closely related, right? Yeah. So the Teddy Bridgewater play, it was a fake counter to the right, and then Jameson Williams gets the ball on the reverse, right, going the opposite way of that counter play. The trick play, the Jameson Williams throw, was a fake pitch. I forget whether this was part of the counter play for the Jameson, the first one, but it was a fake toss to Jahmyr Gibbs, right, to the right, which was then going to run a fake counter to the left, which was the initial part of the Teddy Bridgewater play, and then it was Jameson Williams on the reverse coming back the other way. So if you're Washington, you're like, this is the same play to the other side, right? Only it isn't, because this time Jameson Williams is going to pull up in the backfield and try and throw the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs, who was the initial fake toss guy. There's so much eye candy on this play, and it was showing them effectively something they'd seen early in the game, which broke off a massive run. Mike Samersil's the one guy that can kill the play, and he did. This play, right, when Jameson Williams has the ball and pulls up to throw at the 35-yard line and is looking downfield, Jahmyr Gibbs has got a head of steam running out of the backfield at Mike Samersil with a third of the field to work with. And Samersil turns, bails, and manages to keep on top of him and basically kill that play dead from a coverage point of view. Jameson Williams has to just bail on the play and get rid of it, and instead he decides to throw it anyway, and it's a disaster. But the people that look at that and go, well, that's a ridiculous play call. What is Ben Johnson doing, putting the ball in the hands of Jameson Williams? The guy's a moron. They've been killing people with trick plays all season long, including earlier in this game on a play that's a very close cousin to this one. I think that was not an unsmart play call, and it just didn't work because Mike Samersil killed it.
As I said the other night, though, as soon as you are...
Let me go and check if that initial play was...
You have the receiver. If it's not wide open immediately, throw that thing away.
Right, but it was even more complicated than that because, it wasn't open yet, but it was one of those plays where, he's got the run on him, right? And you had to sort of keep it a beat longer to see, he's actually turned and run with it. It really isn't open, and then throw it away. I get why it got into trouble, but it was just so well played. No, so the first play did not have the fake toss. It was just a fake.
It was an end around,
fake
right?
Counter. No. It was a fake counter to the right, which then had a reverse coming off the back of it. The second play was a fake toss, then a fake counter, then the end around, which then became the pass. So if you're the defense, right, you're looking at this and going, they've shown us something different, but it's going to end up being the same play. You're like, we've cracked it. It's actually smart as hell to dial that up with a pass at the back end of it. It's just that Samersil didn't bite.
Second, yeah.
What I'm saying is justice for Ben Johnson. That was not a dumb play call.
So it's okay.
That was a smart play call that got hosed because Samersil didn't bite.
I mean, yeah, but it's still the Lions beating themselves because there's a better
No, I
play
agree.
to be made.
But so many people were
blaming
just
Ben.
like, that's a dumb play call. It wasn't. It was a smart play call.
I mean, I only like trick plays when they work, Sam.
Yeah, well, that's the way most people see it.
That is my take. Good trick play, genius.
But
bad trick play, you're too cute.
But this is the thing, right? So on a basic level, it's like, what makes good play calling? Well, did your plays work, right? Which is a pretty dumb way of looking at anything. But what actually makes smart play calling is, are you able to layer plays related to each other one after another? Are you able to set something up early in a game, come back to it later in the game, and that play succeeds because of the thing that you played in the first quarter or the second quarter, right? So this is an example of that. Ben Johnson, with his bag of tricks, we never run out, it's as deep as you want, sets up a play early in the game, and it doesn't, like, that had the benefit of both things. It was a trick play. It worked. In and of itself, it scored a touchdown, so it's a win, right? The people that only care about the results, well, that one was a good play call. Not only was it a good play call because it scored, it was a good play call because it set up this play later in the game where you get to show them a very similar play that actually had an extra layer of disguise so that the defense is like, they think they've cracked it, right? Oh, look, you think we're going to fall for this fake toss thing, but I see what you're doing. You're setting up the same reverse that you called earlier. We've got it. So that's a smart play call because you're like baiting them into something that they think they've cracked, and then you hit them with something completely different off the back end of that. Again, the only difference is Mike Samerstill just did not bite, kept on top of his guy, and was able to pick off the throw that Jameson Williams ill-advisedly put in the air. I think that was a smart play call by Ben Johnson, and Samerstill, for the second time in the game, turns a good play into an exceptional play by turning it over.
All right, let's talk a little Commanders here, what this means, and then we'll do a little Lions eulogy to our Lions fan friends. Commanders' first NFC Championship since 1991, Super Bowl championship year with Mark Rippon. Ironically, they beat Barry. That was the only NFC Championship, I think, for Barry Sanders back in 91.
Basically the only good team Barry Sanders was on.
Yeah, kind of sad. Barry didn't have a couple more deep playoff runs, but that was it.
Barry basically had Dan Marino's career, except with a running back, right?
Yeah.
Where you were even less empowered to do anything about it.
Can't say enough good things about Jayden Daniels. I mean, obviously the quarterback is going to be the biggest driver here. I thought the broadcast highlighted pretty well just how much they were getting after him, how much they were trying to blitz, play a little man behind him. He was not fazed by anything. There was two plays. I mean, there's like two missed throws that I remember right off the bat. I think both on third down, just like bad misses from Jayden Daniels. And I think both times he came back on fourth down, either hit Zach Ertz for a touchdown, hit McLaurin, I think it was, on another first down on fourth. He was just unfazed. And we just say this over and over and over again, how cool and calm Jayden Daniels is no matter what. And remember early in the season, I was thinking, I want to see how he handles the blitz, right? I want to see what happens when they heat him up, right? Because right now he's picking apart zones and he's tough to stop as a scrambler and as a design runner. In this game, though, 12 of 15 for 200 yards and a touchdown against the blitz, 91.4 PFF grade. And he's handled every situation. Blitz, four-man rush, design runs, scrambles, throwing the ball effectively, not coming back from a couple of missed throws, throwing the ball efficiently. Jayden Daniels just outstanding once again.
Yeah. I've seen people criticize Aaron Glenn in this game. He say he got too aggressive. He didn't make the changes. Like, he got exposed, blah, blah, blah. I mean, as you said, Jayden Daniels, phenomenal against the blitz, 13.3 yards per attempt against the blitz, the exceptionally good PFF grade. Under pressure, a PFF grade of 97.2, 7 of 9 for 106 yards. So under pressure or against the blitz, he was carving them up. His actual grades, when not blitzed or kept clean, were only okay, though. So if you were a real critic, you would be like, well, the Darnold game plan isn't going to work against Jayden Daniels. He's actually doing really well against that stuff. Back off, play coverage, just drop everybody, right? Problem with that is, look at the players that you've got in the back end. These guys that have played one snap before now, do you really trust them to play sound assignment coverage, without getting picked apart by the likes of Terry McLaurin, et cetera? And I think it's a reasonable answer to say no. Like, okay, it's not working. Like, we're getting aggressive and we're dialing it up and he's beating it. I do, however, think that we have a better chance of winning this way than just dropping back and getting picked apart with guys that shouldn't be out there, right? So
Yeah.
I think Aaron Glenn was kind of caught in a tough spot, catch-22 situation where it's like either way we're kind of screwed. We might as well go down swinging. That's been the ethos of this Detroit Lions team all the way through the season. If we're going to go down, we might as well go down trying to swing haymakers and make it happen. I'm not going to criticize him too much for staying aggressive.
I mean, it's not really revisionist, but we say this every year. Season-long weaknesses pop up in the playoffs, and then we say, this is why you lost. For Detroit, did they survive Aiden Hutchinson, who got hurt way back in Week 5? Yes, they survived him for most of the season. But there was a point late in the year, because you asked this on the review show. Have we seen this before? I thought the Niners on Monday Night Football were almost as effective as Washington offensively against this Lions defense. They went shootout with them, but Brock Purdy made a couple mistakes.
Yeah.
That, and they missed field goals, right? The Niners were on pace. They were ready to drop 40 on this Lions team. Like, this bad defense, injured defense that has an inconsistent pass rush and injuries on the back end and what have you. We had seen this before. Washington didn't make the same mistakes that San Francisco made, though. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it was like a microcosm of we don't have. Yeah, Zadarius Smith was a really nice pickup, but even when Hutch is out there, they don't really have the horses to create a ton of pressure with a 4-man rush. So this is just kind of how Detroit's built.
Yeah, but even just, I mean, imagine dropping Hutch into this game. Like, you've got a guy like Andrew Wiley at right tackle for Washington, who's been fine, good, solid all season, right? But we also have experience of seeing Andrew Wiley in the playoffs being a massive liability for a Super Bowl caliber team, right? Like, imagine what happens if Andrew Wiley, instead of, going up against the highest apex of the pass rush being Zadarius Smith, what happens if you put Aiden Hutchinson on him for 60 snaps in this game instead? Like, almost certainly has a significant swing in Detroit's favor. So what hasn't really been a problem all the way through the season, losing Aiden Hutchinson, might have been a problem in this game because he could have changed it. So, yeah, like, it's definitely – I sort of feel like a game like this has been coming for Detroit for a while. I kind of expected it to surface against Minnesota because that was a very good football team, even though they completely collapsed in the last couple of games. It didn't. They were able to completely destroy the Vikings, but eventually they were going to run into a team that was able to exploit a bad defense or a banged-up defense and at least, withstand the creativity and the aggression that Aaron Glenn was going to throw at them and still carve them up. And then you were in a shootout, right? Now, the problem with this game, for Detroit's point of view, is like generally I would say, okay, fine, they'll win a shootout or they'll at least be very much in it. They timed that. They found the game where Washington was going to be able to have success against their defense, and it coincided with the game where Jared Goff had turnovers. Those two things can't coexist. You can have one or the other, right? We've seen already they've won a game where Jared Goff had a bunch of turnovers and they got away with it. We've also had games where their defense has been carved up and they've gotten away with it. You can't do them both at the same time, certainly not in the playoffs. And unfortunately, that's what happened.
You might be able to sum up the game by how the quarterbacks handled pressure, which you talked a little bit about, but the official numbers for Jayden Daniels under pressure, pressured 13 times, goes 7 of 9 for 106, and 4 scrambles. That's the other thing. Didn't take a sack. He has if one of the knocks on Jayden Daniels' game is he still gets sacked, too many times, which often comes with a quarterback that's going to hold the ball longer, scramble, and try to make plays. That hasn't been the case during the 2-game playoff run here for Jayden Daniels. So 4 scrambles when under pressure. He is avoiding those negative plays, whereas Goff had both crucial interceptions came under pressure, right? The one before the half, too, even that one, Frankie Louvu, quick pressure against Penei Sewell, forces a quick step up from Jared Goff, who misses the throw, and Sanders still makes the play. The other thing I just wanted to repeat from the other night, GM Adam Peters, when you come in after 1 year, I'm always of the mind it takes a couple of years, right? But so many of the short-term moves and long-term moves, but the short-term moves that Adam Peters made, bringing in Zach Ertz for a year, bringing in Frankie Louvu, bringing in Jeremy Chin, bringing in Bobby Wagner, so many of these, and Louvu's there for a couple of years, but like cheap moves, right? A lot of these are working out, right? Dorrance Armstrong, paying Tyler Biadasz. And so some of these are short and they're long-term moves, but they're mid-tier free agency moves, and so many of these players are really starting to pay off, particularly in the second half of the season here on the defensive side of the ball.
I also wanted to give a shout out to Jonathan Allen.
Huge.
There was a 2 or 3 year stretch where Jonathan Allen was one of the best pass rushers in the NFL on the interior, right? It got him paid, former first round pick. His career had been okay up until that point, but nothing spectacular. And then he just starts cooking 2020, 2021. PFF grades are off the charts. Pressure jumps off the charts. He ends up with a double-digit sack season in there as well. And then he kind of cooled off again. Like he sort of hadn't hit that level for a year or two. And then if you Google Jonathan Allen injury this season, what you will find is a bunch of articles that sort of say the headlines are along the lines of Jonathan Allen out for the season with torn pec, right? Tore his pec in week 6, I think, this year, which is usually a season-ending injury. You're out, you're done, forget it. Surgery. It's not just like surgery to repair the torn pec. You're done. You're done for the year. He returned in week 17 this year, right? Plays in week 17, plays in the wild card game against Tampa Bay. I mean, didn't make an impact really in those games other than he returned. Against Detroit, though, this one of the best offensive lines in football deal, he had 7 total pressures, according to PFF, had a 90.2 PFF pass rushing grade, 80.5 overall. That was one of the best games we've seen from him in years. He did it having returned from this season-ending, quote-unquote, torn pec. I mean, that's huge from Washington's point of view. They get one of their best players on defense back to the level he was earlier. Maybe it was only a one-off, right? Maybe he doesn't do that again in the NFC Championship game. But that was absolutely a factor for them winning this game.
Very impressive. Very impressive for Allen. Can't say enough good things about the entire Commanders team. And I just want to reiterate this really quick, too. Jayden Daniels not getting sacked. And what we've seen in the playoffs, we're about to talk about the Eagles, and they won, but Hurts got sacked 7 times. We saw Sam Darnold sacked 8 times. We saw C.J. Stroud sacked 8 times. In a year where it feels like offensive lines don't know what they're seeing, and there are games that absolutely where the pass rush can absolutely blow up what an offense can do. The fact that Daniels taking care of the ball without turning it over, taking care of the ball without taking those negative plays, just massive for what Washington's able to do offensively. So can't give them enough credit. And then do we want to just do a quick, for Lions fans, just feel for them,
I feel sorry for them. Like, this could easily have been their year, and yet you look at the weight of injuries that they've had over the course of the year, and you're like, it would have taken something genuinely special to overcome all that and win a Super Bowl. Could they have done it? Sure. Was it likely when you start listing off the injuries that they've had? No, not at all. And for them to even get back to this point, I mean, Dan Campbell said it last year, right? They lose the NFC Championship game against San Francisco. They were a few plays away in that game, and you're like, man, was this our chance? Was this the one shot we got? The first thing Dan Campbell says is, we may never get back here again. Like, it is hard to get back to it, to get to an NFC Championship game, let alone a Super Bowl, let alone win the Super Bowl. It's hard. Like, we're going to have to reset. We're going to have to do everything all over again. And to their credit, okay, they didn't get there. Like, they've come up a game short of that. But they reset. Like, they did reboot. They were as good as they've ever been. They were better. Like, this was the number 1 seed in the NFC. They went into the final game of the regular season with another number 1 seed rival trying to take that away from them, and they annihilated them. They destroyed the Vikings in that do-or-die game to get the number 1 seed. So, they did come back really well from a year ago. They've weathered all of these injuries, and then eventually they just had one game where, again, those two things coincided. The defense couldn't stop Washington, and their offense turned the ball over a few times. And that's how you end up like in the playoffs. That's enough. That's enough to lose to a good team like Washington, who is on the rise. Ultimately, though, I think going forward, it's still good. Like for Detroit, you look at them and say, Campbell's right from a year ago, right? You may never get back there again. We've seen good teams, Miami, Dan Marino, one Super Bowl run. You're like, well, every year. Marino's going to be in the Super Bowl every season. Never got back, right? It may never happen again. But they're going to be healthier next year, right? They're not going to have like a million injuries on defense all over again. You're going to have Aiden Hutchinson back, who was on his way to being Defensive Player of the Year before he got hurt. The bones of this thing are still extremely good, right? Now, the biggest scare for them is what happens if they lose both coordinators and you have to weather what the Eagles weathered a couple of years ago, right? if they lose Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn in the same offseason. Like, that can have a real impact. But
that's the tough pill to swallow.
But everything else is back, right? Jared Goff's back. The offensive line will still be one of the best. Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, like all these offensive weapons, amon-ra, St. Brown, the defense will be healthier. Like, all of these pieces are coming back and should be better next year than they were this year because they're not going to be as banged up. The scare is the coordinator thing, but like, it's still good projecting forward for the Lions.
Plus, you're 1 year closer to having to pay everybody. I mean, it's a tough pill to swallow. This would be the year to kind of make the run. And I would also say that their depth is what got them to this point as well and helped them survive.
Right, but that's less important if you don't have a million people getting injured. Like, the depth allowed them weather as much as they did. And, you know, they made some savvy moves like bringing in guys like Zadarius Smith. But you can offset. Like, they got extremely injury unlucky this year. If they get even averagely injury unlucky next year, that offsets even a blow to the depth, which might not necessarily happen.
Crazy stat here, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Commanders GM Adam Peters has now been to 3 straight NFC Championship games.
Good for him.
He came from San Francisco in 5 of the last 6. So that Kyle Shanahan stat that I would use, every time he has his starting quarterback, he goes to the NFC Championship. Now maybe it's just Adam Peters. Okay. As long as he has his starter, he's going to the NFC Championship.
And won none of the Super Bowls, right?
So far.
Yeah. That's not great.
What do you mean?
Well, he's basically the Buffalo Bills at this point.
Yeah, you just keep getting...
Just keep knocking on the door.
Keep getting on the green, as I always say. Yeah, I feel for Lions fans. Hope you'll still stick with us throughout the offseason, talking draft and everything.
And I'm also
it's a disappointing finish to the season. For a team that's just so entertaining, the way they've built their offense, the way they've built the entire team, the offensive and defensive line, the way they've drafted, the way they've used free agency, I think it's been outstanding. So, look, I think the Lions are here to stay and to be one of the best teams in the NFL for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. And look, the NFC Championship game that we're getting, I think, is extremely compelling and fun and should be a good matchup. I am kind of bummed, though, that we don't get to see this collision course that we were expecting all the way through the season, Detroit versus Philadelphia. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.